Welcome to Experts Unleashed, a podcast that aims to uncover how professionals and entrepreneurs transform their experience into income while making a positive impact in the world. I'm your host, Joel Irway, and over the past 4 years, I've helped entrepreneurs develop and launch their expert-based businesses to grow past 6 and 7 figures per year. Now, a professional expert serves their community through paid training, education, or service, and this podcast will show you how to design and execute your plan to become a 6 or 7 figure expert without a big team. So, let's get started.
What's going on, experts? It's Joel Irway here. Welcome to another episode of Experts Unleashed. Holy cow, guys. You are in for such an amazing treat. I just got off the interview with Jen Kem. And Jen, we had so many excellent conversations. This ended up being a lot longer than I had anticipated. And in fact, we only got to discuss about 2 years of her, I think it's like 14 or 15 year entrepreneurial journey. And we talked about so many different things. If you're a coach or a consultant, if you are looking to start your own retail business, we talk about so much stuff inside of this episode. You are absolutely going to love it. As you know, I focus on opportunity seekers, how people discover opportunities. And Jen has such an amazing story about how she was able to pivot and launch an 8-figure business within 6 months of leaving a multi-6-figure career at a Fortune 500 company. We talk about so many different things. You are going to love this episode that I don't want to withhold anything back from you right now. So let's go jump right into it. You're going to love it. And make sure when you get to the end, connect with Jen and let her know that you heard this episode and that you appreciated it, and let her know how much you loved it. Let's jump right into today's episode. Jen, welcome to Experts Unleashed.
Joel, I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for inviting me. And I can't wait to share.
Yeah, so we got introduced through a mutual connection, Selena Sue, who was our very first guest on our show a few months back. And when she introduced the two of us and we had our first introduction call and we got to know each other, we talked about a couple of things, and I'm like, Jen, this is going to be a fantastic episode. I cannot wait until we have our own podcast show, because this is going to be a lot of fun. So do me a quick favor. Let our audience know, who is Jen? What is she doing today? And just tell us a little bit about what your current business is.
Awesome. Well, Joel, I am speaking to you from my sunny perch here in Honolulu, Hawaii. So I do run my companies from Hawaii, which I think is a little different. Most people choose the bigger areas to do what I do, but that's because I am both a wife and a mother of 3 children, aged 21, 17, and 3. And so I think you can tell, Joel, I'm a pretty busy human. And what I do is our company helps brands get seen, heard, and paid. And so our 3 arms of our companies are, we have one arm that services just the corporate segment. So companies like Verizon, Blue Cross Blue Shield, Bank of Hawaii, bigger firms like that. And then we have a training and development company that helps startups and entrepreneurs and business owners apply the same brand principles that bigger companies leverage into their business and right size it for their business. And right in between that, we actually have an agency and implementation arm that does full brand experience strategy for both sides of the business. But we actually have done for you services. That's the third arm of the company. So I have 3 companies, 2 COOs who are amazing. And, I think you can tell I'm a little busy, but I love to read. I love to shop. I love to travel the world. And I'm really excited about how my life looks now, and worked really, really hard to make it so that I could be a CEO and a present family member inside of my family. And so, yeah, that's who I am.
Fantastic. I mean, it's so awesome to hear how other people run their lives. And obviously everybody's busy. You are incredibly busy and incredibly successful, mother of 3 children, and running multiple successful businesses throughout your career and your professional career. as my audience knows, this show is all about the opportunity, how experts have discovered opportunities throughout their careers to lead them to where they are today. So what I want to do and what I normally do is I want to rewind. So here is Jen, super successful Jen today. I want to rewind back to about 2006 because this was the original conversation that we had. You were a super successful executive working for Verizon, right? So tell me a little bit
Yes.
about when you decided to kind of start to do things on your own. What was happening when you were still working at Verizon?
Well, I got to tell you, Joel, I loved my job at Verizon. And so this is the part that I think interests people a lot because I loved my job. I ran business to business marketing and strategy for the regional office, the West Coast region of Verizon. And I was in charge of a $1 billion budget. I had incredible people working for me. I'm not going to lie. I actually really, really liked my job. And I didn't love all the things that held me to the job because I can be quite a rebel in that way. But that also served me inside of the organization because at the time in 2005, when I was doing that, we had a lot of initiatives that were coming to market, new ones. Really, Verizon is a technology company. People think of it as telecommunications, but it really is a technology company, and they wanted to, bring new things to market. And what I learned in my career, Joel, prior to that, is I was the gal who would always take the crappiest projects on purpose because I believed that if I did those, number one, it fed I love a challenge. And it fed that motivator for me, but also, frankly, it gets you noticed inside of the company. And so, I really did get to an elevated state pretty early in my career, which is not as likely. At least people told me that. And part of it was because I took on projects that were new and risky inside of organizations. And so by the time that in 2005, that I had reached my goal, which was to lead up one of the major arms of strategy and marketing, which really runs the company. Most companies, their strategy and marketing department normally is the one that sets all the goals for the company and the KPIs. And so, I was really proud of that. And so I was running B2B and I had a counterpart who was running B2C, so business to consumer. And he's awesome. We're still friends. And what got me to decide that I needed to leave was I found out by accident that he was making $100,000 more than me. And it was devastating internally, right, for me, because it just felt unfair. And one of my motivating brand values, Joel, is justice. Okay, my 5 brand values are autonomy, justice, generosity, love, and excellence. And it offended every part of my value system. And so, but I knew that I didn't want to leave without a proper strategy in hand because I didn't want to burn my bridge because I had worked so hard for that. And frankly, I also wasn't mad at my counterpart. It wasn't his fault that this form of injustice or unfairness had happened. By the way, the backstory is too, of course, did I try to get paid at the same? Of course I did. It didn't happen. And so, my whole thing was, well, if I can't control this, then the only thing I can control is myself and my own value system. And back to autonomy being my leading value, I said, I have no autonomy here. I don't have the freedom to control my future. And so therefore I made a 9-month plan to exit. And I did that. And I think a lot of people either get pissed off, frankly, of like if they're working in a company and then they either burn their bridge or they stay in the fear of never leaving because they have too many obligations. Remember, I had 2 young daughters at the time. And so there was a lot of reasons for me not to leave. And so I wanted to make sure that I was doing it as smartly as I could. So I took 9 months with an exit plan to leave.
You know what I love about what you said there was because I know a little bit about what you do now today in your business when you described, what your current company is. But the reason why you left to become an entrepreneur, your own business person, is not necessarily because you wanted more. I didn't ever hear those words, but you left because it was a violation of values. And
exactly.
And what I know about branding experts is they're big on establishing what your core values are because that that translates into the language of your marketing, that translates into everything. And I don't know, I just saw that connection. I thought it was really important to point out that you left because of a violation of your values, and go figure, that's what you're doing today for other companies, right?
No, smart insight right there. You absolutely hit it on the head, because that's exactly, I really feel like the most successful entrepreneurs or business owners, if you're going to go and do this, which is one of the bravest things I believe anyone can do, that if you live in your values, then it's hard to go wrong if you pair that with the massive action you have to take to live in those values. And if, like I said, if me being autonomy, realizing that autonomy was my top value, it was like, oh, I'm not meant to work for someone, because, autonomy is your highest value. You don't really like anybody telling you what to do. So thank you. Yeah. Thanks for noticing that, Joel. It's point on.
Okay. So 2005, you discover that your counterpart is making $100,000 more per year than you are. You attempt to go get that same salary. It doesn't work. You're like, okay, great. Red flag. Got to start to look for something else. Okay. What was that thing? Like, what ended up being that leap that you took, and how did you get there? Like, how did you discover this opportunity that you took?
Joel, it actually comes back to my brand eye, right? The ability to see an opportunity in the marketplace that's being underserved and deciding to step into it, even if you fully don't know the answer. So what I mean by that is, I flew on planes a lot at the time. I still do for different reasons, but between Dallas and where I was, because Dallas is where their headquarters are. And every time I would get off the plane, I started to basically my 9-month exit plan, Joel, all I thought about it was like, I need to open my eyes and start looking at what's happening around me, because I was so myopic in the business that I was in, right? The company I was in and my KPIs and goals there, that I started forgetting to like really look at the market outside of that. So I just gave myself a little exercise to notice things, but especially things on planes. Okay. Because people show a lot on planes and in airports. So I said, okay, I'm going to just look at that and see what's going on. Well, what I noticed was women in particular were coming off planes with one very symbolic thing I was like, wow, that's interesting. And it was a pink bag. This pink bag is, I don't know, Joel, if you're familiar, but this pink bag represents Victoria's Secret.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, why are so many people getting off the plane in Hawaii with these pink bags? Well, because there was no place to buy proper undergarments in Hawaii for women. You'd have to go to Walmart, or we didn't have Target at the time. We didn't have Macy's at the time. We didn't have Nordstrom at the time. This was not that long ago, but we didn't have that. We had Costco, we had things like that. So what it meant was when women would get on planes, they would go to, they'd go to New York, LA, Las Vegas, wherever, Dallas, and they would go and buy underwear. Okay. And I said, wait a minute, that's true. I never buy underwear here. And I have 2 young daughters, and I'm like, okay. And so I started doing my research, and I started really getting obsessed. Now, I didn't have a retail background, but I did know how to bring products to market. The head of strategy and marketing is the go-to market person in a company. I knew how to launch product. I knew how to brand product. I knew how to P&L a product to see if it had worth to become a minimum viable product. And I was like, wait a minute. And I also knew, because I lived in such a geographically isolated place like Hawaii, that anybody who's the first mover here does very well. Okay. And so I was like, I don't know anything about women's undergarments, except for the fact that I am a woman, and purchase those things. And I don't know anything about retail, but what I do know are the basic how to bring a product to market. Okay. And that's actually what I want to go back to is like, notice what I do today. It's all the same, even though I'm a small business owner now, or like a smaller business owner, because it's all the same. It's just right sized for the size of business in your market. So anyway, that's what happened, Joel, is I decided, I made the decisive, move to open up the first boutique around women's undergarments and specialize in that. And, I studied the heck out of Leslie Wexner, who is the CEO of the Limited Brands, who owns Victoria's Secret. He is a brand genius in the retail world. He doesn't know it, but hey, Les, if you're listening, I'd love for you, you just need to know you're one of my mentors. And I thought he was missing the mark by not being in Hawaii. In fact, in their business plan, they're a publicly traded company. So I read their SEC filings. I looked at They had no plans to ever come to Hawaii or Alaska, at least in the next 10 years, because they considered it international. They wanted to dominate the US. And I thought that was hilarious because, hello, Alaska and Hawaii are part of the US, but fine. Great. I'll just go ahead and I'll just be here. And guess what? When they do come to town, because I knew that they would someday, I would have my foothold. And there's always room for two in the market, even in a small geographical location. I would have been the first mover. And I was like, our brand experience is going to be epic. We're not going to feel like, so anyway, long story short, I made the decision and I thought to myself, Joel, I had this 9-month plan, right? I didn't have the resources financially. I mean, I was making great money at Verizon and I did have, like I said, I had no reason to leave. When you talked about I even had a parking spot with my name on it, for goodness sakes. I had all the ego things. I had all the money was great. And so I knew that if I was going to fund this thing, and at the time, even a lot of people think that getting business loans are easy. They're not. Getting a small business loan is not as easy as people think. And the only way to do it was to put up collateral, which was my house. And I decided, why would I do that? Why don't I just bootstrap and fund it myself without the loan? And so instead I sold my house and I took the proceeds from that and I put it into this first business. Wow. And and so I opened the first, ladies underwear shop in Hawaii. I know it's not, and if you know me now, it's let's just put it this way too, Joel. The minute that I opened my doors, I could not keep it in stock. I could not keep one piece of anything in stock. I was literally stripped, no pun intended, bare, like the first week we were in business. I underestimated how much inventory we needed. I underestimated how popular it would be, but I created this buzz around it that it was opening because I know how to do all of those things. Right. Mm-hmm. And it was crazy. And then I learned a big lesson in okay, I need inventory controls. I need somebody to help me buy the product. I need better connections to bring the product in. I need to find better economies of scale to ship it because it's very costly to ship anything over here. It's a big part of why people don't start businesses here because of that, just that alone. So anyway, and then I quickly opened up 2 more stores. I had literally in 6 months, let's just put it this way, it made me a millionaire in my pocket in addition to it being a multi-million-dollar business. It was like an 8-figure business in 6 to 12 months because I literally all I did is spend my time bringing inventory in. I felt like I spent all my time accepting stuff. So
you're telling me, let me get this straight. You're telling me that the underwear business in just the state of Hawaii is an 8-figure per year business?
Heck yeah. At that time, absolutely. 100%. At that time. It was perfect time, perfect place. Nobody's selling it, right? You know what I mean? It was at that time. I'm sure it is now for Victoria's Secret because they are here now. And we also have Nordstrom and we also have Macy's now. 12 years later, we have a ton of competition. But at that time,
right, but just the market cap. I mean, I had
crazy.
Yeah. I mean, 8 figures in underwear, in boutique underwear, not even just
Sure. Women need underwear. And here are a few market things. I mean, we wear them every day. We wear underwear most of us do. And here's the thing that I also had a lot of stuff going for me, Joel. Oprah Winfrey did a special on bra fitting and underwear the same year that I decided to go into this market. I was like, this is divine. God is mm-hmm. I was like, this is all perfect. It was this perfect intersection and swarm. And I really felt, Joel, that, this is serendipity, mm-hmm. right? Wow. And I'm one of those people that I couldn't believe it. I literally, some days I would sit there and go, and I was overwhelmed, by the way. So I don't want it to paint this pretty picture of oh, wow, you've got the luck factor or you've got it all going for you. I mean, it was extremely overwhelming. I had panic attacks. I had all kinds of things going because the growth was so hard for me to control that it started to chip away. And I think that's the next part of the story that if you want me to go into, I can happily do that.
Yeah. So I want to rewind a little bit because I want to point out a couple of things, and I want to dive deeper into one specific thing that you had mentioned. Right, I focus so much on the entrepreneurs that I work with, the business owners that I work with, and most of the people who are just kind of starting out and getting their feet wet. focus on what you're really great at. What is your expertise? How can you monetize your expertise, whether you're selling your expertise as a coach or a consultant, or you're launching your own product-based business, but you're still leveraging your skill set that you already know. So you saw this opportunity from getting off a plane. People were importing their own underwear. They were traveling and importing their own underwear. So a huge red flag, huge green flag opportunity came up. And you said something, not to mention all the other skill sets that we're just going to kind of jump over. Like, you've researched the SEC filings of your competitors, and so like you saw the opportunity. But there's one thing that I wanted to focus on is you said that you knew how to bring a product to market, right?
Mm-hmm.
How did you know that? Like, that's what I'm seeing is probably your expertise that you brought from the corporate world and applied it into this brand. What did you mean by that?
Well, of course, different industries and different products have different strategies from a tactics perspective, but not an overall underlying, what I call basic brand go-to-market strategy is applicable whether you're selling widgets or you're selling vaporware. Okay, and what I mean by vaporware is services. Okay, the basic principles of bringing a product to market are the same. So, for example, in Verizon, one of my biggest the things that we had to sell the most were VoIP, voice over IP to businesses, managed services, security, all those types of things. And in putting together a go-to-market strategy for any product, and we also supplied, CPE or customer premise equipment to customers, businesses, whether it was their actual phones or even devices, modems, all the things, right, to run companies' technological backbone. And the go-to-market strategy to do that is very similar to what you could do in a retail setting. It's, creating the relationships, because marketing and strategy inside of a company, their main partner inside of the company is the sales team, right? And so for me, it was always coming together and understanding what does the sales team need to be super successful with our customers, and then providing scripts and strategies and incentives, right, to make them more, happy. So for me, I took that same lesson in go to market and I brought it to the retail, where my first 9 months while I was doing my exit plan, who are the key partners inside of this marketplace I need to become friends with? Who are other business owners that are doing similar things that we could partner with? Like, so if they're selling, let's say, women's clothing, or they're selling women's accessories, how can I become part of their ecosystem, right? So creating that relationship, they become quasi-ambassadors / salespeople for me, and we're willing to become part of the hype of the go-to-market. Then it was secondly, like, who is the media? So for example, in my job at Verizon, we had the marketing and sales departments. One of our main partners in go-to-market is the media. How do we create non-salesy ways to get the media to cover topics like why security matters in your organization? What are the breaches that are happening in the marketplace, right? We talked a lot about that. So we could sell our managed services, right? And then they would bring us on as experts, like your experts podcast here, right? Experts Unleashed. They would invite people like me and the director of sales to come and talk about what are ways companies and people can protect their IP, protect their secure systems, things like that. So for me, it was like, okay, my relationship with the media, I went back to them and said, hey, I'm going to be doing this. Who's the reporter or the journalist that I can become friends with there and make that happen? And then you have to look at the supply chain, right? Go to market is not just about what on the surface, especially in internet marketing, which I notice is so interesting. Like, it's just about, lead generation, which is, yes, absolutely important, right? But it's really taking it all the way through. That's why brand experience matters, because the brand is the true ecosystem of a business. It's not just the marketing or even the visual representation of the brand. It's the way that people experience the brand and the stakeholders inside of that. So the stakeholders include your suppliers, et cetera. So my whole goal with this go-to-market strategy is to me, execution of a great GTM, go-to-market, is 75% of this planning that I'm speaking of. Okay. The rest is just doing it. Okay. So the next piece was the supply chain, as I mentioned, and being able to establish that I could get product when I needed it. What were the products that I knew could fly off the shelves? I did a little focus group and test group with a few of my friends who knew that I was up to this, and I knew they were ideal clients because they all watched Oprah. They all, were women executives. I actually wasn't like looking for the basic consumer, because I knew that my product was not going to be a cheap product, right? If they wanted cheap, they could go to Walmart and buy a 6-pack of underwear. Okay. I wanted, people to, this is not the Hanes woman, right? Like she's not the Hanes or Fruit of the Loom woman, right? She's the woman that actually goes to Victoria's Secret and still feels like I buy it here because I have to, right? And I knew that I could come up with that premium conversation if I could test it out. And again, Oprah helped me with that. She doesn't know, but she's going to find out one day when I'm on her seat in her backyard. But that's a proper go-to-market plan, right-sized for a small retail business. Does that make sense? So I took all the elements and then I kind of said, for this business, how do I warm the market up? And so that when I open my doors, at least we'll sell at 50. I mean, my goal was just 50% of the store. I didn't realize like literally I'd be to the bones like the first week we're in business. I was like, okay, I didn't realize people wanted this so bad. And I also wanted to make sure, because after you do a proper go-to-market, you have to sustain, right? So it's kind of like, then how do you maintain the momentum? And that's through, advertising, brand partnerships, all those types of things that I did in business. And I could like talk forever about it, but I want to spend time on your show. So you let me know when I'm getting too detailed or not. So.
I do want to move on because this wasn't even the core focus of where I wanted to take the show, but this was so amazing that I wanted to give it the time. And so like to kind of summarize the last question that I want to end this specific piece on, and this can be as simple as a yes or no answer, but like when you launched, right, did you even think this was 8-figure potential within 12 months? Like, was that your goal or was it something different?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. It wasn't my goal.
Perfect. So was it a lot smaller or was it bigger?
It was a lot smaller. I just thought, great, if I can, make $250,000 in sales this year, I'd be happy. Like really, I think back to my 9-month plan, right? I thought, okay, because if I know if I can do 250, I could probably 2x or 3x that the next year. I had very conservative goals. Let's put it that way. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. So this is between 2006, 2008 when you did your retail shop, right?
Yes.
Okay. So what happened? Because you're not doing retail anymore. So obviously something happened. So 2008, what happened?
So the economy crashed. I think, anyone listening who was especially in either real estate or retail probably felt the pain more than any other type of business owner at the time. And if you weren't a big company, I mean, even companies like the limited brands and other companies filed for, bankruptcy during that time. So you can imagine how hard it hit the small business owner who didn't have the cash reserves that these other businesses had. And so I was actually at the pinnacle of my growth. And my problem is that I didn't have enough financial depth because literally was in and out. Joel, remember, it's a 10-figure business with 3 stores now. I opened them very quickly. I was on a path to open like 4 more stores so I could dominate, this market and possibly even license it to go to the other states because now we had a system. But I was in the right place at the wrong time in 2008 because I didn't have the cash reserves because all my money was going to inventory. We couldn't keep stuff in the store. Like it was crazy. And so my business definitely got affected severely by the 2008 recession, what was happening in the US at the time.
Okay. So tell me what happened. Like, did you realize you had to get out of retail? What was
it was full meltdown, meaning like I had to shut everything down. Everybody around me was shutting down. I was one of the last people and by the way, I was doing it based on my ego, not based on my business acumen. Let's be clear. I was so stubborn around it. All of my advisors told me, you need to shut it down before you lose more money. Because I was losing money every day, like bleeding, hemorrhaging, like everybody else was. And because 2 years before that, sure, a woman's going to buy a pair of underwear for $30. You think she's going to buy that right now when she's worried that her job's going to go away or her husband's job's going to go away, right? That was not happening. Literally, it felt like I was in abundance and then literally the driest desert. I was in the Mojave, okay? It was like, and I was the same as many other people. And by the way, not just small business, but go to the mall. It was the ghost town, right? Big businesses, right? And so I finally, against my own ego, but under the advisement of my advisors, to shut it down, liquidate, and basically claim bankruptcy on the business. It was the worst moment of my adult life Joel, like my ego was completely offended, triggered, and I felt like a failure. And I was like, meaning I went through a period, Joel, of 6 months after that happened, feeling actually depressed. And I never even knew what depression felt like until that moment. And for 6 months, I stewed in my depression, if you will, or just really being very, what I call, mean to myself. Like, how could you make this not work? You're smarter than that. And I get a lot of that, frankly, from, it's a cultural thing for me. And also, of course, I look at me. Thing is, when I tell people about my story, I had a lot of success and so when you don't have success, it's actually sometimes harder because then you're like, what happened? And it was my first entrepreneurial venture, Joel, right? So even though I had all this experience in corporate and then I had such success in 2 years, that was my first big bitter pill. And it was a big pill to swallow. It was a big one. It wasn't like, in what I have a lot of counterparts, clients and friends who are small business owners who they got to iterate their failure and success, like really like what I call like the rubber band effect. Like, okay, this didn't work. We pivot here. This didn't work. That I didn't have to pivot up until that point. My big pivot was I got to lose everything. So it felt really depressing. And so the bottom line is for 6 months, I stewed in my own pity party. And it was my daughter, who at the time was 10 years old, who came out one day because I literally sat on the front step of my grandmother's house. Let me be clear. I lost everything. I had to move back into my grandmother. I lost my gorgeous house, my amazing, like all my luxury things. And I had to go back and ask for a room to stay in at my grandmother's house. Like we're talking about full straight up, bottoms down. Right. And, my daughter came outside and she put her hand on my shoulder and she said, "Mommy, it's time to wake up. You're Jen Kem. You know what to do." And sometimes even now I think about that moment and I get a little emotional about it because all the things that I'd done up to that point, I did based on my intellect and my gumption, and my business acumen. And in entrepreneurship, you have to remember that, we're human beings and like failure doesn't feel good. Right. It doesn't feel good. And that was the lesson I needed to learn in that moment. And from that, then the rest is history from that moment, because that moment caused where I am now, CEO of 3 companies, service-based, very happy. I mean, I can honestly say, this is not a BS. I really am a happy person. Like I feel really good about my life. And I didn't at that time in 2008 for that 6 months, so actually going into 2009, I was the opposite of what this feels like. So, yeah.
So during that 6 month reflection, right? I mean, so just to get clear, was your business shut down during these 6 months, or was this in the process, all part of the process? Like it took 6 months to kind of wind everything down, or?
Yeah, it was about 3 months of the wind down. And the last 3 months, I just didn't do anything.
Gotcha.
I basically just sat in my pity party.
So what was going through your mind in terms of like your next steps? Like what were you kind of contemplating? And you might not even have been planning. Like I can't say I've been in such an extreme situation, but as an entrepreneur, I've gone through some pretty amazing lows, so I can definitely relate. But like during those 3 months when you really weren't quote unquote doing anything, I mean, were you exploring? Were you brainstorming? What were you thinking about in terms of your next steps?
Yeah, I wasn't doing any of those things. I was vacant is how I would describe it. But it was that moment with my daughter that literally the machine went back on inside of my body. I'm not even joking. If there was a movie to capture that moment, it's amazing how her saying that to me, I needed the reflection from an outsider that cared about me. So I was in reflection. My reflection was, I suck, I suck, I suck. That was my reflection, to be honest with you. I suck, I suck, I suck. And then it was when she said that, the machine turned on again, Joel. Just the same machine that turned on when I was told that or found out by accident that I was making $100K less than my male counterpart. And then that created my retail business. That moment, like literally made the machine go back on and go, wait a minute. If I did this over again, what would I do?
Mm-hmm.
And the same process that I had described earlier about my 9-month exit plan, I did for basically the next 6 months after the first 6 months of depression or
Mm-hmm.
winding down the business and whatnot. The next 6 months, my plan was this: I need to go back to basics. And I definitely, one of my first decisions in that moment was I'm never going to do retail again, because there's back to autonomy being my number one value. Actually, retail, my goodness, I have mad respect for people in retail, especially small business owners, because man, I'm telling you, unless you own the commercial property that you're in,
Mm-hmm.
you are, it's like having a job,
Mm-hmm.
because the landlord is who you owe everything to, right? You're bound into these really, really complex contracts. And, you have a lot of inventory that comes in and out. So you're holding a lot of cash flow. Your cash flow is, in every business is is king and all that stuff. But in retail specifically, and I start to look at, okay, I wouldn't choose that business model for me again, even though, wow, it was a great moment in my life. Right. But so that was one of the big decision points I made. So I said, I need to go back to services. Okay. So how can I go back to services? And and by the way, Joel, I want to answer your question that you might ask, which is like, what were my goals? I was like, God, if I could just make $100K in my pocket as a consultant, I would be happy, right? Because I was making 4 times that as an executive at Verizon, and then the light bulb went on. I was like, I could get Verizon to pay me $100K.
So if you're listening right now, this is the whole goal of, we're about 35 minutes into the conversation, but this is all really important stuff. But the whole goal of why I originally wanted Jem to come on was to have her explain how she landed her first service-based client or consulting client, as her previous employer was her first client, and now is actually her best client, right? So let's talk about that now. So you'd spent 6 months planning after your 6 months of reflection and self-wallowing and hitting the bottom of the barrel, and the machine kicked on when your daughter woke you up. You're like, okay, great. Said, I'll never go into retail again. Boom, that passes behind you. And you said, I'm going into services. I'm going into consulting, right? What made you, like, the cat's out of the bag? You landed Verizon as your first client, but like, how did that process come about? Like, what was going through your mind? Like, oh, okay, I'll just go pitch my my previous employer that I gave notice to 2 years ago.
Well, here's the thing about resistance. She or he, whatever you want to name it, is a interesting and funny friend in the business conversation, because I actually didn't. Okay, in my head, Joel, I said I could get them to pay me that, but you know what I did instead of asking or putting my plan together to ask them for it? Was I said, let me go try it differently and try to get another client so I could show them how legitimate I am, because, I had this failure behind me with the business, and I thought, oh, they're going to think I suck. Really all these silly little lies I was telling myself. And so basically I hit the streets, if you will. Like, I knocked on doors. I asked for any contract I could get to be a go-to-market brand strategist inside their company and help them lead their team. And I said, look, I'll even do it for $5,000 just to get the first contract. And that wasn't working very well. Okay. And because nobody knew me, and I tried that as a resistor point to asking Verizon, even though I had it in my head, oh, I'm going to get them to be my first or my biggest client. And so anyway, when I got past actually knocking on doors and getting rejected a lot, and by the way, it was in the middle of the year. So listeners listening in, you might know that a lot of times when people make decisions around consultants or new projects, they'll do it in the beginning of the year all the way up to about June. And the only reason a consultant comes in any time after that is because there's a crisis, okay, that a company's overcome in a part of their business. And so I was at that kind of place where I was a nice to have versus a need to have in terms of my services. And so finally I was like, Jen, you're making this too hard, right? After deciding I needed to prove that I was worth it for 3 months of knocking on doors, I said, you know what, I should just go back inside of Verizon and have a conversation with one of my allies there. And sure enough, literally, Joel, it's not even sexy. It's not even it really was, hey, pick up the phone, call one of my allies and say, hey, so what's rocking over there right now? What's happening? How are you guys doing? And, basically he told me, he was like, it's going, how it is, Jen, we've got the projects, we've got this, we've got that. we're still struggling in this area. God, I wish, you were still here, and I said,
Ding dong.
yeah, boom. And I was like, okay. I said, and they're like, you'd never come back, right? I said, to be honest with you guys, now that I have the taste of entrepreneurship, I'm not keen on taking a job. But I got to tell you, in the back of my head, Joel, being a mother, and, I knew that if I had to go back to work, I would, right? I had this plan B. I really did. My plan B was, I'll go take a job. I knew I was hireable. But the question was, could I get them to pay me without being an employee? And also, I think one of the things, if you have listeners that are employees or former employees, one of the things that probably violated your values was that consultants always got listened to more than employees, right? And so I was like, wait, I'm going to get all the things I want. I'm going to get paid and I'll get listened to, which feels really good if I get it this way. So I said, look, I'd like to come in and help with that. And he was surprised, Joel. He was like, you'd come back for that? And I said, I'd come back as a consultant if you thought that would support this project that seems to be not getting the momentum you want. And he said, yeah. He goes, I'm going to go talk to the decision maker. I'm going to go talk to the business owner inside of a company. They're called business owners, right? Who have the budgets. And I'm going to talk to him. It would be stupid not to bring you back for a limited time. I was like, yeah, perfect. And so I took the 6-month project, and the 6 month, I did, you know what, Joel? I made the contract $100K exactly. 6 months, $100K, just to see if it would work. And they said, deal. They were like, what a deal, given that I had all of that experience, that expertise before, and they had a gap, and so I didn't have this elaborate plan to get back in, but I did use some of my contacts. And I think some people would go, well, I burned my bridge. You might not have. See, I think a lot of people think they burn bridges, unless you went out like completely in a blaze of glory that was like, could have made the news or something. You have friends inside of a business. And if you would just reach out to them and say, hey, I'm available for this. Who do you know inside of the company that I could support? It's amazing what will turn on for you.
You know what I love about this part of the story, and it's okay. There's a couple of parts that I love. Number one was how you had this limiting belief that like, oh, I don't have the expertise yet to go land other clients, and what you were trying to do was go prove to your former employer that you had this expertise that your former employer was already paying you for.
Yes, exactly.
Like, oh, I was making $400,000 a year at Verizon. I must have had some sort of, we couldn't see the forest of the trees, which was, oh, I must have had well over $400,000 worth of value because that's what they were paying me. But you took a step out. You're out on your own. You're a consultant. If you felt like you had to go prove to them that you were worth just $100,000 a year. So 25% of your value. Well, you actually booked the contract for 6 months. So, so still 50%. But still, these limiting beliefs like, oh, how do I go land my first client? And quite literally, you just flipped the script and turned into a consultant versus an employee. And there it is. I mean, it can't always happen as easily as that, but sometimes the opportunities are so close to us. They're much closer than we think. I love that story.
We make up a lot of stories that put barriers, right? And because we're so if you're an expert in any area, you actually are so smart, you outsmart yourself, and then you make it harder. And I certainly did for me. And what's interesting is I forgot that one of my superpowers as a brand strategist is I always unpack and turn things on its side. Like that was my job and here I was doing it naturally and didn't even honor that was one of my superpowers. Literally like approaching it differently. I don't want to come off like I was some type of like, ooh, look at me, look at this like genius move that Jen made. It was natural to me because I did that in my job. Like I'd always look at a different way. How do you launch something? How do you put it in front of people in a different way that they can't see? How do I turn the old model on its side? How do I, if like, for example, in the internet marketing world, I'll give you an example is like how Jeff Walker turned the sales launch formula on its side, right? Like instead of, with a 3-part video series, it's the same kind of idea that I have. Like I could see things like that whenever I was inside of a company, but I couldn't see it as well when I was trying to do it for myself. And so that was a big eye opener for me that I was like, I basically just shifted this on its side and still got what I'm good at and what I wanted because I just honored my expertise in that, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah. I mean, you said that experts are too smart for their own good. I call it the expert's curse. We talk about it all the time. We can't, we have a hard time communicating what our real value is. We have a hard time. A lot of times the opportunity is really just closer than you think. And just to kind of wrap up this part of your story. I mean, it's so amazing because the things that you told me in the beginning about when you were working at Verizon, you were in charge of $1 billion with a B, $1 billion budget, right? $1 billion budget. They were paying you $400,000 a year. You had all of this inside knowledge. You were obviously providing tremendous value to their company. And yet when you took a step outside and you're like, oh, I hope I can go land a $5,000 client so I can get the right to get my foot back in the door to go speak to Verizon again and hopefully make half of what I was making when I left. Oh, life would be so awesome. But it's just, it was a lot simpler than what you ended up thinking, right?
Oh my gosh, even hearing you replay it right now, I'm still like, wow. I still go, and I think, thank you, Joel, because for this podcast that you have, because I think what people don't realize is that they have gold inside of them. Like, the picture of the gold's right behind like that last chip. It's a lot of people quit before. Like the gold's actually inside of you, right? And you don't remember until you kind of replay those moments and go, wait a minute. Yeah, I did that, because I actually, things that you don't think are extraordinary too, sometimes people say that's extraordinary. And honestly, I can swear to God, humble. Like sometimes I go, yeah, that did happen to me. And I just kept leaning into my plan, if you will, right? It wasn't even this like manifesting or like visual thing for me. It was more like, well, if I just make 100K, and by the way, I thought that was a little win when I did the contract for 6 months and got 100K. I really thought my big goal was 100K for that year. And I didn't even know if I could do that. I would have been happy with 50K, to be honest with you, for the year. I was ready to work my way back up, if you will. Absolutely. I had that attitude around it because I was like, who am I to try to break into this when I don't have a company yet? And so I think people get surprised if you ask for what stretch yourself on the ask. And as long as you've got legitimate background to back it up, how much you'll actually get in return. It's just amazing.
Right. Especially as consultants, when consultants or whatever we try to do as entrepreneurs and small business owners, launching our own consultancy, launching our own service-based business, we feel like we're starting from, and I've seen it so many times, we feel like we're starting from scratch and we just want to neglect all of our previous background that we've already worked for in the professional development space. And it's like, we just want to throw it out the window and be like, oh, I can't use that. It's like, why can't you use it? Why can't you use that previous experience? And it's so amazing. So let me ask this question. When you landed that first 6-month contract with Verizon, because I have some experience with B2B mega corporate sales, like Fortune 100 companies, Fortune 500 companies, sometimes that can take a long time. How long did it take for you when you made that initial phone call to when you received your first payment and they said, okay, yes, it's a go?
Yeah, it was a 30-day process. It was, I think a lot, because remember the difference is I agree if it's like a colder or lukewarm relationship, it'll, the corporate dance is longer, but it's very lucrative, right? If you stay in it versus, even entrepreneurs who sell to other entrepreneurs, it's faster, but you have to put up a lot to get a lot of return. So the ROI in a corporate engagement is high if you stay in it. The reason I know that it only took 30 days is they were hurting in this area, this project that I had expertise in. So I was the perfect person. They could have actually hired somebody from their normal consulting firms that they use on the regular, like Deloitte, IBM, Tata. Like these are all big consulting firms, who come in and bring in professionals. But because I was a former executive and I wasn't part of their firm, they made, actually one of the barriers was I wasn't set up as one of their in their supply chain, right? So they have this process, right? Their vendor process. And they made concessions for me because I was like, look, at first they were like, hey, would you work through, Deloitte? And I was like, no, I said, because I don't want to be in that system. I said, I right now I'm available and I don't know what my next step is, but, I'd like to be added as a vendor. And because I knew, so I did have an advantage, Joel, so I don't want to play like,
right.
but once I was in my machine, that's my point, Joel. It's like, turn on the machine and I'm unstoppable, right? I was like, oh, I knew every question to ask because I've had that happen to me when I was in their place of making a decision that I wanted to bring someone faster than the machine there would take, right? So it took 30 days to get my deposit. And then it took 2 weeks for me to get in there. So it was about a 6-week process. And then it was 6 months of consulting. And then I turned that into now a 10-year relationship with them as one of my biggest clients.
And I don't want to downplay the fact that you said that you had an advantage. That's the whole purpose of this podcast is to realize when opportunities present themselves and to be able to seize them. Like, that's what we have as experts, because experts have their expertise in an area, and that's what creates the advantages. That's what creates the opportunities. And so I don't want you to downplay it, because that's the whole purpose of this podcast, is being able to just see what your superpower is and to be able to seize that opportunity. So
I love that. I love that you're celebrating that, because I think it isn't, when we talk about advantage, it sounds a lot like sometimes like, you have to do something that's outside of you to do it, but actually your advantage comes from inside of you.
Yeah, exactly. And people want to say it's luck. I mean, and luck does play some part of it, but good opportunists, they create their own luck because they're seeing opportunities that they have created for themselves, and they just have to have the awareness around themselves to be able to see it and maybe put that extra effort to create the opportunity. Like what you did with Verizon, the opportunity was always there. All you had to do was make the phone call and see it come to life. So I love that. Okay, so this took a little bit of a different turn than I had, but this episode was fantastic. Jen, I think we might need to do a follow-up episode if you're open to it, but I do want to quickly just recap everything that we've talked about, because we are coming up on our time here. And so you're still working with Verizon today, and that in that 6-month, $100,000 contract has turned into, I think what you said before, and correct me if I'm wrong, you said it's well over, or at least 7 figures per year now. Is that? Okay.
Yes.
So it's a 7-figure per year contract that you have developed. You are now probably making way more than your counterpart made back in the day. I don't know if that's true or not, but
it's absolutely true. And he laughs because he has a job now. Still, he doesn't work for Verizon anymore. But he's like, "Wow, you really turned that one into a good one."
Yeah.
So yeah.
So you turned a 6-month, $100,000 contract into 7 figures per year with just one client, and that is enough for most entrepreneurs to be very, very happy with. And so we've talked about so much stuff. I mean, we didn't even get to the 3 businesses that you currently operate and own. I'm sure there's tons of opportunity stories to talk about there, but rewinding all the way back to 2005, 2006, when you ran into that revelation that your counterpart was making much more than you. That was probably a blessing in disguise. That led you on your journey to open up your retail store, which incredibly did 8 figures in the first 12 months. And you just blew that up because you saw an opportunity to provide underwear in the state of Hawaii. You want to talk about going niche? That is niche. So that's an incredible story in itself, which you discovered just by witnessing people get off the plane in Hawaii, and you saw them importing their own bags. So you did that until 2008. Then the economy crashed, and the bigger that you are, the harder they fall, and that is such a true statement on almost anything in life. And so that kind of puts you on a 6-month kind of downturn, and then a 6-month upturn when your daughter kind of woke the machine inside of you, and that led you down the world of consulting and service-based businesses, and then you landed your first 6-figure contract by going back to your previous employer. I think it's an incredible story. Did I leave anything out within just those 2 years that we spoke about?
You are incredible at the recap. Yes. In fact, I'm like, I need to go and transcribe what you just said so I can put it into a book, because people keep telling me I need to write the story. So yeah, perfect summary, Joel.
Awesome. Jen, thank you so much for sharing that journey, sharing that story. There's so much value that people can listen to and extract from this episode. Take a couple of minutes, where can people find you? Where can people follow you? Where can people connect with you? And let's just drop some links.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, you can find me at Jennifer Kem, that's KEM.com. And that's where, in today's world, that's where I like to connect. I have, my company websites, but, if we want to get to know each other, please, go there. I have a great resource for you there called the Brand Map. And I also have something called the Brand Archetype Quiz, which all the things that I talked about as an advantage that I have, Joel, finding out the advantage that I have actually has a lot to do with psychology-based brand understanding of yourself as a CEO, as a thought leader, as an expert. And so I'm happy to have you take that at brandarchetypequiz.com so you can find out what your unique advantage is and that you can then really amplify that in the way that you do your business dealings. So happy to support everybody with that. And it's free. So
awesome. And what was that link again? I just want to make sure we get it clear.
Sure. It's brandarchetypequiz.com.
Excellent. All right. So go check that out. Go connect with Jen. Let her know that you heard her interview on Experts Unleashed and give her some love, connect with her and just and let her know what you thought about this podcast. This was such an amazing interview. Jen, thank you so much for being a part of it. I had a blast. I always love diving deep into these stories. We usually uncover a lot of things that we take a lot of pivots in the interview itself. And so thank you so much for being on the show, and for all of you listening right now, we'll see you on the next episode. Take care.
Thanks so much for listening. We hope you enjoyed today's episode, and we look forward to giving you the next one. Now, if you want additional trainings and content outside of the podcast, I release exclusive video trainings on my Experts Unleashed YouTube channel. And if you'd like to come hang out with thousands of other fellow experts, join our Facebook group community where we do hangouts and webinars to help support you in your journey. Finally, if you'd like my personal help to develop, launch, or scale your business, contact me directly for private consulting opportunities to see if any spots are available. And you can find all of the information above at expertsunleashed.com.